What's up, guys? Robert Rule of Two Review here, and today, all hail The Last of Us. It's my review of Left Behind. Man, oh man, am I feeling speechless. I have just about 20 minutes ago finished completing Left Behind, the first and only single-player DLC for The Last of Us, of course. Something that a lot of people have been talking about lately. I've referred to it several times on my video channel over the last month or so because I was such a humongous fan of The Last of Us and was so massively hyped for Left Behind. And of course, it was also giving us, also aided by some other recent news lately, it's been giving us some ideas and glimpses into where Naughty Dog might be going in the future with The Last of Us, if of course they decide to go anywhere with it. So anyway, what's interesting to note, you'll probably see that you're not actually watching any video of the game Left Behind, so forgive me on that. As much as I didn't love the idea of doing a review for the game without being able to show any video of it, I kind of have no choice. For those of you who don't know, which is probably most of you, it's actually, Sony has a very interesting block on HDMI video capture for their products. I think it's some sort of legal thing. I'm not 100% sure of the details, so forgive me on that. But I do know that that is the case. It is very difficult to record video, to record gameplay footage, via HDMI on your PS3, and I assume on the PS4 when I ended up getting one of those. There are, of course, ways to do it. There's some other stuff I've been looking at that I'm probably going to be getting in the next few days here that's going to allow me to do that going forward, especially because it won't be too much longer before I do also have a PlayStation 4. So anyway, long story short, that of course means that I haven't been able to capture any footage of myself playing Left Behind. So you're not going to be watching any video of The Last of Us, but I'm sure you've played The Last of Us. You've seen a lot on Left Behind. You are familiar enough with it going forward that, I'm sure I can just kind of talk to you about it, give it my review and my thoughts, and you'll still kind of pretty much grasp the idea. So anyway, let's get to the good stuff and talk about Left Behind. Okay, so The Last of Us Left Behind. What an interesting beast this DLC really was, and this bit of the story that the game is intending to give you, the player, in sort of enhancing not only the story and the world of Left Behind, but more importantly, the character of Ellie. What you'll notice early on and throughout the experience, which for me lasted between 4 and 5 hours, I can tell you most people are probably going to play it in about 2. So if you're looking at it and you're looking at spending the $15, just know it's a pretty short deal. I was certainly hoping for more as far as the breadth and the length of the experience. But that aside really didn't affect my feelings. So like I was saying, what you'll notice pretty early on is this is a very intimate, personal look and journey that you go on for Ellie and Ellie alone. You do, of course, meet and run into Riley, who was her best friend. Something that was discussed in I think it was called The American Dream, the companion comic or graphic novel for The Last of Us, the original game The Last of Us. And she was a character in that, which I never read personally. I'm definitely going to now. So, you run into her early on. You're experiencing a lot of this game, not all of it, but a lot of this game through Ellie and Riley and how their relationship goes. And so, gosh, I guess, in setting up the premise of the game, I don't want to spoil a whole lot about this experience, because it's definitely the mystery of how it's going to end is what's important to the game. But the way it's formatted is amazing. So I'm gonna talk about that. That's kind of something that I really, really enjoyed. The game takes place in 2 different periods, and you kind of go back and forth between the 2 of them. It's very interesting. You're playing during a period of the game, during a period of The Last of Us, when you were actually playing through that controlling Joel and even Ellie for a few points. So half of the game is played during the middle of The Last of Us from a different perspective, and the other half is played, I don't really know how long we're supposed to assume this is before the events of The Last of Us. I'm going to say a year, 2 max before The Last of Us would have actually started. So before Ellie would have met Joel. So what's really great is the game is broken up into these 2 segments where you'll play a small section doing something from the past, where Ellie boarding school, something that we knew again from the comic and some other extra lore for The Last of Us. She's living in a boarding school with a group of people, very regimented, very safe. You know, they've got chores and a little community, and they work for food, and they have friends and relationships, and so that's where she's living. And you're playing during that period when she is still there. And then it'll, as you finish a section in that time period, you then jump forward to a time period during The Last of Us. And that's what I think I'm going to decide not to actually tell you what period of time this is happening. I'll just let you know it's pretty much smack dab in the middle of The Last of Us. So you'd recognize it immediately. And it's a lot of fun going back and forth between the two, especially because it does kind of what I think the TV show Lost was doing, if that makes any sense for anyone who's seen that, where you're experiencing, a lot of the story and some of the characters interacting with each other in what we'll call real present time, like the current time of the story you're following. And in The Last of Us, that would be during the game, The Last of Us. And then just like in Lost, you'll get a flashback to something that, is relating. It's a flashback on the character who you happen to be following in that present time, quote unquote. But the flashback, while it's of course something from years past that seems like kind of a random scenario involving the character you're watching currently, what you learn if you pay enough attention is that it's actually very much setting up a specific kind of motivation, a definition to the character of said character, the personality traits, the experiences they've gone through that lend to why they make decisions in the present time that you're following, especially if the scenarios that they're in kind of mirror each other. And that's definitely what I got from The Last of Us. Whereas we're following the present time during the game of The Last of Us where Ellie is with Joel. And then in the midst of some sort of challenge or something she needs to do or overcome, we then get to that flashback period, a year or two prior with Riley in the boarding school where the scenario was really not one of tenseness. It's not one of a whole lot going on. It's just kind of experiencing the kind of person and girl that Ellie was at the time. And it's like those are kind of lending thematically and tonally to the Ellie who's the present day, more hardened version who has been gaining this bond with this man, Joel, who she thought she would hate and she turns out to love eventually. And it's the perfect dichotomy. They're going for this kind of offsetting ideas of the same character in different yet also similar scenarios, if that makes any sense. Kind of a convoluted way to explain it. Hopefully you grasp it. And if you've watched Lost, as silly as that sounds, like I said, you probably get it even more. So that's going to be my hope. So that format, that formula for the game, I thought was really great. Especially because as a fan of the game, a huge fan of the game, I loved Ellie to death. If you've experienced The Last of Us and you don't have good thoughts and good feelings for Ellie, you're a son of a bitch. That's the only way I can put it because she is amazing. Such a wonderful character, beautifully acted, fantastic. Just the way her motivations and everything about her is expressed and relayed through the game is just so wonderful. And she's just so smart and yet so tough. And it's really great to experience The Last of Us and especially Left Behind and see the cracks in that tough armor and really learn the kind of person she is. So the fact that they explored that side of Ellie and did it all but perfectly, just, oh my God, it just had me, on the edge of my seat following every single moment that happened. So provided, here's the thing is, Left Behind, it is not an action game. It does have a few action beats, but it's really not about that. Until the very, very end, you're not doing a lot of that stuff. You're kind of just, again, I don't want to spoil it because I don't want to talk about the present day stuff. I mean, you're accomplishing different tasks, both in the previous time and in the present time, that are similar to each other and working towards a goal. And you can tell it's like Ellie, the same person, has there's two different versions of her because we're so far apart in time as well as so far apart in experience that you're kind of watching the same character broken up into two people, each with their own individual arc and their own challenges to overcome. And they need to change and become a different, better, stronger person on the other end of each journey. And so it's really cool to see them mirroring each other when you know it's really the same person. So going back to what I'm getting at is, like I said, if you're looking for that kind of balls out action game or experience, you're not going to get it here. And I kind of knew that going into it. I assume a lot of you might as well. And I wasn't 100% sure how I felt about it, more so after the game got started. But it didn't take long for any fears to be alleviated. Again, provided you already feel invested in the story and the universe of The Last of Us, and more importantly, of course, the characters of Joel and Ellie, then you're going to get what you need out of this game. Its purpose, I'm so impressed with Naughty Dog, as if I couldn't already be, but I'm even more impressed with how they treated this, because they really weren't afraid to say, hey, we're going to make this relatively quiet, intimate story about a young girl. It's not about the tragedy that has befallen her. It's not about her experience through this hard world, trying to kill and survive and do all this stuff, even though that, of course, is still present. It's really about, how has she had the capacity to love previously? What did she go through before she became this even tougher girl that is in The Last of Us? The one who was such a wisecracking, shit-talking kind of kid to Joel before she learned that she actually cared for him and he cared for her. And it's, they really spend their time with this more so than I expected. And I loved it. I mean, it might not appeal to everybody. That's, I think, the thing that I should definitely mention about it is I can see how it wouldn't appeal to everybody. But when you're spending time in, again, the past, quote unquote, where you're in the boarding school and you're with Riley and you learn who Riley is, how she's involved with the Fireflies and what that means for Ellie, her initial opinions of it, and how close she really is with Riley. We do so many great moments, just like was lended to in the very first reveal trailer for this during the PlayStation 4 launch event, where we saw them, at a rundown carnival at a carousel, and they're just kind of, running around laughing, having fun and all that stuff. That's what you're experiencing when you're in the past with Riley. And it's great, man, because it reminded me of some of my favorite moments in The Last of Us, where we're seeing Ellie kind of still get to be a kid. We get to see her be just a girl, a really young girl. She's 14 freaking years old. That is really, really young, especially to be, experiencing the kind of things that she's had to in this world she lives in. Because again, 14 years old, she was born into this world. She's only ever known this world of chaos and the infected, and all this stuff with the cordyceps. Like, that's all she's ever known. So when you see those, she's put into a position, a scenario, to be able to act like a kid, to forget about the world around her and all the terrible, shitty things she's seen and had to deal with, and to, just be a kid, just be a girl with her other girlfriend. That's just, it's great because, of course, Naughty Dog knocks it out of the park. It always felt real. It felt natural. It felt palpable. It absolutely was believable. You would believe that is the kind of person she would be. It's almost like it's the person she would want to be because, she can't. She lives in this terrible world. And so a lot of that stuff, like I said, you're spending time with her and Riley, as Riley is, again, just choosing my words carefully, she is trying to show Ellie a few things and, have sort of a personal smart moment with her while still making it fun because, there's a reason why she knows that, the fun might not last forever. So she's trying to do that for Ellie's sake. And it just builds their bond. And, they just became such wonderful characters to watch unfold. And the way, the dichotomy of this light, soft-hearted kind of more playful past, just smacked up against, the hardcore reality version that she is, where she's with Joel in the current time of Last of Us. It's really, really, really amazing. And it's both sad and heartbreaking and also fun and happy at the same time. It's really neat, and Naughty Dog did some really clever tricks that I won't spoil you to make you just enjoy walking around as a little kid, in some rundown toy stores and stuff and just having fun with your friend. You don't even need to be fighting infected and pulling out your gun and your bow and sneaking around and doing all that hardcore and killing people to enjoy this game. They 90% of it is not that. And that's why it's so good, is they nailed the emotional climactic arc aspect of Ellie's character in this game. And they couldn't have done a better job. Okay, so to prevent myself from rambling too much more, I'm going to go ahead and move past all the tonal quality of the game and just really quickly touch on the mechanical stuff and to kind of wrap this up. So mechanically, it's the same game. Visually, it's the same game, and it's great because I personally hadn't played it since I beat it, that first week the game had come out. So it's my first experience getting back into it, and it's just so nice to step back into this world and see these characters again, just to hear their voices because they're so good and lovable and you feel like you know them from experiencing The Last of Us. So coming back into the world, it looks and feels the same. That's what I'm getting at. And that's mostly a good thing, the few detractors about the game would certainly say the AI stuff and the stealth controls and everything didn't really work all perfectly. And those same issues, which I could admit they were kind of issues, they do exist. They are present here. However, since they never bothered me the first time because everything else around found it was so good. I felt the same here. That's going to be up to you to determine how you're going to feel about it. If you played The Last of Us and you know where you stand on those aspects, just know that stuff is the same going into this. And ultimately, I think that's good. I'm glad that it felt the same. So, what's interesting is, like I said, it's not an action game. You're doing a lot. There is some sneaking around and stuff, but you're doing a lot of just hanging out with Riley and doing that, sort of just being a person in this world and getting more of the story and the setup for Ellie's character. However, it is interspersed with moments of action. Of course, you do have clickers and spores and stuff to worry about, and you do have people to worry about. And I won't ruin how you get involved in those scenarios, but they do happen. So what's neat is there's definitely a larger emphasis on stealth here because Ellie isn't made to be the all-out action brawler kind of character that Joel was. She's a little girl, Joel was a full-grown, strong man. Ellie is different. She's a kid, and so being a kid, it's not about, picking up a bunch of bazookas and AK-47s, and just, freaking tumbling off of buildings, choking people out with their neck. And, she isn't that person. She's much quieter, much more sneaky. You're going to do a lot of sneaking around and doing those jump knife kills we get those really great animations where she kills someone quietly. And it's one of the few moments that still kind of breaks me out of the world of The Last of Us. And it's worse in this than it was in The Last of Us, where if you're in a room of people, let's say there's a bunch of clickers or just a bunch of bad guys around and they're searching for you, and you get to a point where you come up on one guy and you can do that stealth kill where you just, you press triangle at the right moment from behind and you kill him silently with the knife instead of, a bow and arrow or a gun. The problem is her kills in this are so hardcore violent and they're just so loud. It's just silly that of course the rest of the characters won't hear it. They could be 10 feet away looking the other direction. And the way she kills people this way is she will jump on their back and just, grunt and scream. And the other person's just blah, 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 making all these noises, trying not to die. And you're knocking shit over and rustling around on all these, debris on the floor. And it makes so much noise. But because you're still effectively doing the game version of a quote-unquote stealth kill, you're still stealthed, so the guy 10 feet away isn't going to notice it because you pressed the button that said stealth kill, not gunfire shot. So, it's one of those things, just like in the first game, you got to remind yourself it's just a game, and that's what this is. So, that aside, it's still great being able to do that. I will say, the thing I want to touch on is the finale. They do give you an action finale. So you get to this point where you're in this last little sort of standoff, if you will. And it's quite lengthy. It becomes more and more heated as you go, and you go through kind of waves of enemies, different kinds of enemies. And the scenario and the reason why you're doing it is certainly cool. And there's even a little bit of a pressure element because there's something happening that you need to stop within a certain period of time. And it's a nebulous period of time. It's not like there's a clock counting down to anything. You need to just accomplish this because you don't have much time before something happens and then it would be all over. And while the concept and the setup was brilliant, I'm not going to lie, I found it a little bit annoying because it was really hard. And it was hard in the ways that I don't think they meant it to be. I think it was just, they just sort of set it up in a way that didn't feel conducive to the kind of gameplay that The Last of Us has. So that was really frustrating to go through. However, 5 or 6 tries in after being really frustrated, I finally calmed down and took my time. That will be my advice to you guys when you get to this moment is you got to take your time. It's all you can do. So I took my time. I got through it. I got to the end of the game. So when it comes to the finale, I will tell you that the theories going into this was that you were going to learn how Ellie becomes infected. And I can tell you that that's kind of basically what's going on here. I won't ruin it. I won't really ruin any more than that, but I will say that that's not an inaccurate thing. And so the way that this game wraps up, which of course I'm not going to spoil it, I can tell you it's to die for. Very similarly to the Last of Us, it was this amazing emotional beat, and it was like both hard to watch and also mesmerizing. The characters involved are just so wonderfully written. Riley, by the way, was fantastic. I do think the voice actress, whose name eludes me, was amazing. She was marvelous. But she kind of just she almost sounds and feels too adult, and her voice is like too deep and almost too mature for how young she's supposed to be. So that kind of clashed with who Riley was overall, but it really didn't affect the game or the character for me. As a character, how she's actually acted and written, perfect, amazing, Oscar worthy, just like Ellie and Joel were. So the way that this game comes to its conclusion, the last thing I'll say, this is where I'm going to end the review. The last thing that I'm going to say is, It does also similarly to me. I felt this, and actually people could totally disagree. But to me, it had the feeling of exactly where the first one did, where it could have easily gone to another scene. You didn't even know it was going to end. I did not expect it to end how and when it did. And when it cut to black and the title came up and you realized the game was over and you're going to see credits, I was shocked. I was surprised. I didn't really want it to end that way because it felt incomplete. But at the same time, it was complete enough for sure to know exactly how that part of this moment, ended. And it was great. Just like how I said the first game ended on that moment that at first I wasn't sure about, but when I thought about it, I realized it was brilliant. It was perfect for that game. And I'm pretty sure that that's how I'm going to end up feeling about Left Behind as well. I kind of am upset to know that there's no extra DLC planned, because there's one specific element that I think that they should have and could have explained and still given us the same effect, yet they chose not to. So it just sucks because they've already said this is the only single player DLC, nothing to look forward to for The Last of Us, the PS3 version. And we, of course, as I talked about recently, and I'll put a link to my video about this below, we recently found out that The Last of Us 2 is not confirmed to be in development as the next game that the other team of Naughty Dog is working on. It is possible. They're brainstorming ideas, so it's absolutely on the table. And I think it will happen at some point, but because we know it's not in the cards yet, and there's no more DLC for The Last of Us, it's like this could be it, if not ever, at least for a very long time. And if this really is it, I mean, wouldn't be my favorite way to end the entire story and experience that is The Last of Us. But I'm going to remove that from the table and ultimately say it doesn't matter as its own experience, as well as an experience aiding to everything that happened in The Last of Us. It was freaking marvelous, I know my nitpicking about, the very final standoff scene and the fact that it maybe ended in an incomplete fashion may exist, but I'm telling you, they don't really hinder my experience and my feelings on the game. So in that respect, I'm going to go ahead and give this a review score. The second review I've actually done giving an actual score for a game. So all these things considered, stepping back into the wonderful world that is The Last of Us, and even more so, the wonderful character that is Ellie, and learning who she is and who she was, as well as getting ideas of who she could be. So marvelous, so perfect. So I flat out, with no sort of qualms about it, I will give this game a 10. Just like the first one is a 10, this game is also a 10, even with those issues. Because a 10 doesn't have to mean perfect, but it does mean brilliant. It means masterpiece. It means as good as a game like this could ever be. So yeah, like I said, The Last of Us Left Behind, it's a 10. Okay, guys, well, that's it. Thanks for tuning in to my very long 20-minute review of a 4-hour DLC campaign for The Last of Us. That's just how strongly I feel about the game. If you listen to it, you obviously got how much I love it and what I felt about it, and that I'm so passionate about it that there's that much to talk about. So hopefully you dug it and you enjoyed it, and I really hope that it convinces you to play Left Behind if you haven't already, or even better yet, The Last of Us if you haven't already, even though I sadly couldn't play any gameplay footage of the game. So that's it. Kudos to you, Naughty Dog. Bravo. I just love you guys, man. Thank you so much for everything you do. We are lucky and blessed as gamers to have you guys doing the things you do. So that's it for today, guys. As always, if you like what I'm doing, you can feel free to please subscribe to the channel, like and share the video, and share your comments and your thoughts below. And thanks as always for tuning in, guys. I will catch you next time.